Welcome to Mr. Shadow's Stories, where the darkness whispers secrets and the truth is far more terrifying than fiction. Tonight, I bring you tales from those who work when the world sleeps. Stories from the veterinary night staff who discovered that some things lurking in the shadows aren't supposed to be there at all. Turn off your lights, lock your doors, and whatever you do, don't listen to this alone. Let's begin. Story 1: The Examination Room. Sarah had been working as a veterinary technician for 3 years, but the night shift at Greenwood Animal Hospital was something she'd only recently started. The pay was better and she needed the money, but there was something about the clinic after midnight that made her skin crawl. The building was old, built in the 1950s, and it carried that peculiar smell of antiseptic mixed with age. During the day, it bustled with life, barking dogs, meowing cats, worried pet owners, but at night, it became something else entirely. It was a Tuesday in October when Sarah experienced something that would make her question everything she thought she knew about reality. She was alone that night, monitoring 2 post-surgery patients, a Labrador recovering from a tumor removal, and a cat that had been hit by a car. Both were stable, sleeping peacefully in their kennels in the recovery room. Sarah sat at the front desk, filling out paperwork, when she heard it. A sound coming from examination room 3. It was a low, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the tile floor. Sarah's pen stopped moving. The clinic was supposed to be empty except for her and the 2 sleeping animals. She held her breath, listening. Drag, drag, drag. The sound continued, rhythmic and deliberate. "Hello?" she called out, her voice cracking slightly. "Is someone there?" Silence. Sarah stood up slowly, grabbing a flashlight from the desk drawer, even though the hallway lights were on. Something about having it in her hand made her feel safer. She walked toward examination room 3, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. The door was closed. She was certain she'd left it open during her earlier rounds. It was protocol to keep unused rooms open for air circulation, but now it was shut tight. Sarah reached for the handle, her hand trembling slightly. She pushed the door open. The room was empty. The examination table stood in the center, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The cabinets were closed. Everything was in its place. But the smell hit her immediately. It was the unmistakable odor of decay, strong, putrid, like something had been dead for days. Sarah covered her nose and mouth, gagging. How could that smell be here? The room had been cleaned and sanitized just hours ago. She checked the trash can, empty. She opened the cabinets, nothing but supplies. The smell was everywhere and nowhere, with no source she could find. Then she saw it. On the examination table, despite the surface being clean and empty, there were marks. Wet marks, like something had been lying there, dripping. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. She backed out of the room slowly, pulling the latch closed behind her. As the latch clicked, she heard it again. Drag, drag, drag. But this time, it was coming from inside the room she had just left. Sarah didn't wait. She ran back to the front desk, her mind racing. Should she call someone? The overnight veterinarian was not due for another 2 hours. Should she call the police and tell them exactly what? She sat at the desk, trying to calm her breathing, when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The logbook. The clinic's patient logbook tracked every animal that came through the doors. It was open to a page from 15 years ago. Sarah knew she hadn't opened it to that page. The logbook for current patients was digital now. This was one of the old archived books they kept in storage. Her eyes scanned the page, and one entry stood out. October 17th, 2009, German Shepherd, named Max, by owner Robert Chen, brought in unresponsive, died during examination, examination room 3, time of death 2:47 a.m. Sarah looked at the clock on the wall. It was 2:43 a.m., 4 minutes. Sarah didn't know what compelled her to do it, but she pulled up the clinic's old records on the computer. She searched for Robert Chen. What she found made her stomach turn. Robert Chen had sued the clinic back in 2009, claiming negligence in his dog's death. According to the notes, he'd made threats, saying his dog would never rest, that the clinic would pay for what they'd done. The case had been settled out of court, and Robert Chen had died 2 years later. But his dog, Max, had been cremated, and Sarah read the final note in the file. Owner refused to collect ashes. Remains stored in examination room 3, cabinet, never claimed. The clock now read 2:46 a.m. Sarah's hands shook as she stood up. She knew what she had to do, even though every fiber of her being screamed at her to run. She walked back to examination room 3. The door was open now, though she had closed it. The smell of decay was gone. Instead, there was a different scent, faint but indisguisable. It smelled like dog, that warm, familiar scent of fur and loyalty. Sarah stepped into the room. She opened the cabinet she had checked earlier. There, pushed to the very back behind boxes of syringes, was a small wooden box with a brass nameplate that read, Max, beloved friend. At exactly 2:47 a.m., Sarah heard something that would stay with her forever. A sound she'd heard thousands of times in her career, but never like this. The gentle thump of a dog's tail wagging against the floor. 3 thumps, then silence. The next morning, Sarah contacted Robert Chen's family and arranged for Max's ashes to be properly laid to rest. She never worked the night shift again, but the other night staff reported something strange. Examination room 3 never smelled of decay anymore. Instead, sometimes, just sometimes, the morning staff would find it with a faint scent of dog, and the examination table would be warm, as if something had been lying there, waiting for someone to finally take them home.
Story 2. The Surgery Suite. Dr. Marcus Webb prided himself on being a man of science. In his 15 years as a veterinary surgeon, he'd seen it all, or so he thought. He didn't believe in ghosts, didn't believe in supernatural nonsense. Everything had a logical explanation. Until the night he met the cat that couldn't be there. It was a stormy February night when Dr. Webb received an emergency call. A cat had been found on the roadside, barely alive, and needed immediate surgery. He arrived at the clinic at 11 p.m., ready to do what he did best, save lives. The cat was a beautiful calico, young, maybe 2 years old, no collar, no microchip, a stray that someone had been kind enough to bring in. She had severe internal injuries, and Dr. Webb knew the chances were slim, but he had to try. He prepped the surgery suite, laid out his instruments, and began the procedure. His assistant for the night, a young tech named David, monitored the anesthesia.
The surgery was complicated. The cat had ruptured organs, internal bleeding, and broken ribs. Dr. Webb worked methodically, his hands steady despite the mounting challenges. 3 hours in, the cat's heart stopped. "Starting compressions," Dr. Webb said calmly, beginning CPR. They worked for 20 minutes. Compressions, epinephrine, more compressions, but the cat's heart wouldn't restart. At 2:34 a.m., Dr. Webb called it. Time of death, 2:34 a.m. David began cleaning up while Dr. Webb removed his surgical gloves, feeling the familiar weight of failure. You couldn't save them all, he knew that, but it never got easier. "I'll take her to cold storage," David said quietly. Dr. Webb nodded, washing his hands in the sink. He heard David wheel the body out of the surgery suite, heard the door to the cold storage room open and close. That should have been the end of it. Dr. Webb was finishing his notes when he heard something that made him freeze. Meowing. It was coming from the surgery suite, the room he'd just left. The room should be empty. "David?" Dr. Webb called out. "Did you bring in another patient?" "No, doctor." David's voice came from the break room down the hall. "Just cleaning up." The meowing continued, insistent, loud, coming from behind the closed door of the surgery suite. Dr. Webb opened the door. Sitting in the middle of the surgery table, perfectly healthy and grooming her paw, was the calico cat. The same calico cat whose body David had just wheeled to cold storage 5 minutes ago. Dr. Webb's scientific mind tried to process this. Mistaken identity? Another cat? But no, there was the surgical site, fresh stitches visible through the shaved fur. There was a distinctive marking on her left ear. This was the same cat, the cat that was supposed to be dead. "David!" Dr. Webb's voice came out strangled. "David, get in here!" David rushed in and stopped dead in his tracks. "What the? How did she—" "Check cold storage, now!" David ran out. Dr. Webb stared at the cat, which stared back with brilliant green eyes. It meowed again, then jumped down from the table and walked toward the door, looking back at him as if expecting him to follow. David returned, his face pale. "Dr. Webb, she's still there, in cold storage. The body is still there." This couldn't be happening. Dr. Webb walked to cold storage himself, David trailing behind him. He opened the door to the refrigerated room. There, on the shelf, wrapped in the blue surgical drape, was the calico cat's body. He could see her distinctive markings through the drape. Behind him, he heard meowing. He turned around. The calico cat was sitting in the hallway, watching them. "This isn't possible," Dr. Webb whispered. The cat turned and walked down the hallway. Dr. Webb followed, his scientific certainty crumbling with each step. The cat led him to the clinic's office, to the file cabinets where they kept old records. The cat sat down in front of one specific cabinet and meowed. With trembling hands, Dr. Webb opened it. Inside were files from years ago, cases from before he'd started working at this clinic. He pulled out the drawer that the cat seemed to be indicating. The files were from 2015. He flipped through them until one caught his eye. Calico cat, female, approximately 2 years old, found on the roadside, severe internal injuries, died during surgery, February 18, 2015. Time of death, 2:34 a.m. No owner, no name, cremated. Dr. Webb checked his phone. Today's date was February 18th. The time was now 3:15 a.m. The cat meowed softly and walked toward the front door of the clinic. She sat there, looking out into the stormy night. "She wants to leave," David said quietly. He'd been reading over Dr. Webb's shoulder. Dr. Webb approached the cat slowly. "I couldn't save you then." He felt foolish talking to what might be a ghost. "I couldn't save you tonight either. I'm sorry." The cat looked up at him with those green eyes, and Dr. Webb could swear he saw understanding there. Then she did something that made his breath catch. She rubbed against his leg, purring. "I think," David said hesitantly, "I think she's trying to tell you something." Dr. Webb knelt, and as he did, he noticed something he'd missed before. Around the cat's neck, invisible until he was at this angle, was a faint shimmer, like a collar made of light, and hanging from it was a tag. He couldn't touch it, couldn't read it directly, but somehow he knew what it said. "Thank you for trying." Dr. Webb reached out to pet the cat, and his hand passed right through her. She meowed one final time, stood up, and walked through the closed glass door as if it wasn't there. Outside in the storm, Dr. Webb saw her for just a moment more, running, healthy and whole, into the darkness, running free. Then she was gone. Dr. Webb and David checked the cold storage again. The body was still there. This time they made sure she was cremated properly, with dignity. They even held a small ceremony, just the two of them, acknowledging the little life that had passed through their hands. But that wasn't the end of the story. Since that night, other night staff at the clinic have reported seeing a calico cat in the hallways. She never stays long, never interacts, but she's always there when another animal dies during night surgery, as if she's there to guide them, to let them know they're not alone. Dr. Webb still doesn't know if he believes in ghosts, but he learned something that night that no veterinary school teaches. Sometimes some souls don't leave because they're trapped. Sometimes they stay because they have something to give. Comfort, understanding, the knowledge that someone cared enough to try. The calico cat taught him that medicine isn't just about saving lives. Sometimes it's about honoring death with the same respect.
The kennel in the basement. Riverside Veterinary Clinic had been serving the community for over 40 years, and the building showed its age. The kennels in the basement were original to the structure, with old metal cages and concrete floors that echoed every sound. Jennifer hated the basement kennels. She'd been working at Riverside for 6 months, and every time she had to go down there for the overnight shift, she felt it, that overwhelming sense of being watched. The other staff members laughed it off, saying the old building was just creepy and that she'd get used to it. She never did. It was a quiet Wednesday night in March. Jennifer had only 2 overnight patients, a beagle recovering from dental surgery upstairs, and a German shepherd in the basement kennels being monitored for seizures. At 1 a.m., Jennifer did her rounds. The beagle was sleeping peacefully. She dreaded going to the basement, but it had to be done. The stairs creaked as she descended, each step echoing in the concrete stairwell. The basement was always cold, even in summer, and tonight was no exception. Her breath misted in the air. The German shepherd, named Duke, was awake in his kennel, watching her approach. His tail wagged slightly when he saw her. "Hey, buddy," Jennifer said softly, checking his chart. "How are you feeling?" Duke whined softly, but seemed calm. Jennifer noted his vitals, gave him some water, and was about to leave when she noticed something odd. At the far end of the basement, past the rows of empty kennels, there was one more cage, Kennel 13. Jennifer had been down here dozens of times, but she'd never noticed that kennel before. It was partially hidden behind an old storage shelf, but she could see it now clearly in the dim light. And there was something in it. Jennifer's first thought was that someone had brought in a patient and forgotten to tell her, but that didn't make sense. All admissions were logged, and she'd checked the system before coming down. She walked toward Kennel 13, her footsteps echoing. As she got closer, she could see the shape more clearly. It was a dog, large, sitting perfectly still, facing away from her. "Hello?" Jennifer called out. "Who brought you in?" The dog didn't move, didn't react to her voice at all. Jennifer reached Kennel 13 and looked at the chart holder on the cage. There was a chart there, old and yellowed with age. She pulled it out carefully. The paper was brittle, decades old. The handwriting was faded, but she could still read it. Patient, unknown, breed, mixed, sex, male, admitted March 15th, 1983. Aggressive, dangerous, owner deceased, awaiting euthanasia. Jennifer's hands shook. 1983. That was over 40 years ago. She looked into the kennel. The dog was still there, still sitting with its back to her, still perfectly motionless. "This isn't real," Jennifer whispered to herself. "This can't be real." But then the dog moved. Slowly, so slowly, it turned its head to look at her. Jennifer's scream caught in her throat. The dog's eyes were empty sockets, black and hollow. Its fur was matted and falling off in patches, revealing gray, deteriorated skin underneath. Its jaw hung open at an unnatural angle, and when it looked at her, she could see that there was nothing inside its mouth. No tongue, no teeth, just emptiness. But the worst part, the part that would haunt Jennifer forever, was that despite all of this, despite being clearly dead, the dog was still wagging its tail, slowly, deliberately. Thump, thump, thump. Jennifer stumbled backward, knocking over a metal tray. The clatter was deafening in the concrete space. The dog stood up. It moved stiffly, joints creaking like old wood, and walked to the front of the kennel. The cage door was closed and locked, but the dog simply walked through it as if it wasn't there. It stood in the aisle now, 10 feet from Jennifer, and she could smell it, that overwhelming stench of death and decay. The dog took a step toward her. Jennifer ran. She didn't think, didn't plan, just ran. She hit the stairs and took them 2 at a time, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. She could hear it behind her, the click of nails on concrete, getting closer, closer. She burst through the door at the top of the stairs and slammed it shut, throwing her weight against it. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then she heard it, a long, low whine from the other side of the door. It sounded so sad, so lonely, that despite her terror, Jennifer felt tears spring to her eyes. "I'm sorry," Jennifer whispered through the door. "I'm so sorry." The whining stopped. She heard those footsteps again, nails clicking on the stairs, getting quieter as whatever it was went back down into the darkness.
Jennifer spent the rest of the night upstairs, refusing to go back down. When her shift ended at 7 a.m., she went straight to her supervisor. "I need to know about Kennel 13 in the basement." Her supervisor, a woman named Patricia who'd worked there for 20 years, went pale. "Who told you about Kennel 13? "No one told me. I saw it. I saw something in it." Patricia closed the office door. "We don't use those basement kennels anymore for a reason. Sit down, Jennifer." Patricia told her the story. In 1983, a dog was brought in by the police. It had attacked and killed its owner, a man later discovered to have been abusing the animal for years. The dog was deemed dangerous and was scheduled for euthanasia. But on the night before the procedure, the veterinarian on duty, a man named Dr. Howard, had decided to do it early, against protocol, alone, in the basement. Something had gone wrong, terribly wrong. The dog had fought back. In the struggle, Dr. Howard had a heart attack. He died on the basement floor. The dog was still in its kennel the next morning, but it had somehow hung itself on its own leash through the kennel bars. The official report said it was impossible. The physics didn't work. The kennel design didn't allow it. But there it was. They sealed Kennel 13 after that, welded it shut, moved all operations to the other kennels. We don't talk about it because people who work the night shift alone sometimes report seeing things. We've had 3 people quit over it." "Why didn't you tell me?" Jennifer demanded. "Because most people never notice it. The kennels are numbered 1 through 12 now. 13 doesn't exist in our system. The ones who don't see it are fine. The ones who do..." Patricia looked at her sadly. "The ones who do usually don't stay long." Jennifer quit 2 weeks later, but before she did, she learned one more detail that she wished she hadn't. Dr. Howard's first name was Richard. His friends called him Rick, and the dog that had been in Kennel 13, the police report listed its owner's last name, Howard. The dog hadn't been a random stray brought in by the police. It had been Dr. Howard's own dog, the dog he'd been abusing for years, the dog that had finally fought back. And now both of them were trapped in that basement, locked in an eternal cycle of violence and regret. Jennifer never worked in veterinary medicine again, but sometimes, late at night, she still wakes up in a cold sweat, hearing that sound from her nightmares. The slow, deliberate thump of a dead dog's tail wagging in the darkness. Thump, thump, thump.
Story 4. The Last Appointment. Oakwood Emergency Veterinary Clinic operated 24 hours, but the shift between midnight and 8 a.m. was always the quietest. Dr. Rachel Kim had been pulling these shifts for 2 years, and she'd developed a routine. Check the patients, do paperwork, and maybe catch a brief nap in the break room if things are really slow. Tonight was supposed to be one of those slow nights. She had one patient, an elderly golden retriever named Buddy, who was in the final stages of cancer. His owner had said goodbye earlier that evening, making the difficult decision to have him euthanized in the morning. For now, Buddy was resting comfortably on pain medication, spending his last night in peace. Rachel checked on him at midnight. He was sleeping, breathing slowly but steadily. She stroked his head gently. "I'll make it peaceful for you tomorrow," she promised. "No pain." She returned to the front desk to work on billing. The clinic was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional beep of medical equipment. At 2:47 a.m., the front door chime rang. Rachel looked up, startled. The door was locked. It always was during overnight hours. Emergency clients had to ring the bell for entry, but no one was at the door. Through the glass, she could see the empty parking lot illuminated by a single streetlight. The chime rang again. Rachel stood up, walking to the door. She could see clearly that no one was there. Maybe it was malfunctioning? She was reaching for the door when she saw it, a shadow, moving outside, just beyond the reach of the light. Human-shaped, but wrong somehow. Too tall, moving in a way that didn't match how people walk. The shadow approached the door. Rachel stepped back, her hand reaching for her phone. The shadow stopped right at the glass, and then she heard it, a voice, neither male nor female, coming from everywhere and nowhere. "I'm here for my appointment." Rachel's mouth dried. "We're closed. You need to call and—" "I have an appointment," the voice repeated, "at 3 a.m. Check your book." This was insane. Rachel didn't want to look away from the door, but she backed up to the desk and grabbed the appointment ledger. She flipped it open to today's date. There, in handwriting she didn't recognize, was an entry she knew hadn't been there before. 3 a.m. Special appointment. Final passage. Rachel's hands shook. I didn't write this." "Let me in," the voice said. "I have work to do." "Who are you?" "I am the one who comes when medicine fails. I am the one who ends the suffering. I am the last mercy." Rachel understood then, with a clarity that felt like ice water in her veins. She was talking to death itself. "No," she said firmly, "you can't have him. Buddy isn't scheduled until the morning. His owner wants to be here. You can't just—" "Rachel Kim," the voice said, and hearing her name in that otherworldly tone made her knees weak. "Look at your patient." Rachel ran to the recovery room. Buddy was still in his bed, but something had changed. His breathing had become labored. His eyes were open, filled with pain despite the medication. He whimpered when he saw her, a sound of pure agony. "No, no, no." Rachel checked his vitals. His heart rate was erratic. He was going into crisis. She could try to stabilize him, push more drugs, and keep him alive until the morning. But for what? For 6 more hours of suffering? So his owner could say goodbye to a dog in agony? Rachel had taken an oath. First, do no harm. Sometimes doing no harm meant letting go. She returned to the front door. The shadow was still there. "If I let you in," Rachel said, "you have to promise me something. No pain. He doesn't suffer." "I never bring pain, only peace. Pain is the realm of the living." Rachel's hand trembled as she reached for the lock. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was insane, that she was having a breakdown, that she should call someone. But she thought of Buddy, suffering in the next room. She unlocked the door. The shadow flowed inside, and Rachel could see it more clearly now. It wasn't exactly human-shaped. It shifted, changed, like smoke given form. But there was something gentle about its movement, something almost kind. "Show me," it said. Rachel led it to the recovery room. Buddy was worse now, his breathing ragged, his body trembling. The shadow moved to his bedside. Rachel watched as it did something she couldn't quite see, reached out with appendages that weren't quite arms, touched Buddy with hands that weren't quite there, and Buddy relaxed. His breathing eased. The pain left his eyes. His tail, which hadn't moved in days, gave one weak wag. The shadow bent down, and Rachel could swear she heard it whisper, "Good boy, such a good boy. It's time to rest now." Buddy closed his eyes. His breathing slowed, then stopped. It was 3:03 a.m. Rachel checked for a heartbeat, knowing she wouldn't find one. Buddy was gone, but his face was peaceful, more peaceful than she'd seen in weeks. She turned to thank the shadow, but it was already at the door. "Wait," Rachel called out. Will you come back?" The shadow paused. "I am always here, Rachel Kim, in every clinic, every hospital, every place where life meets its end. You cannot see me most times, but I am always here doing my work." "Why could I see you tonight?" "Because tonight you needed to understand. You are good at what you do. You save many lives, but sometimes the greatest mercy is not to save. Sometimes the greatest kindness is to let go." The shadow moved toward the door, then paused once more. "His owner will understand. They will be sad, but they will know you did right by him. Tell him he didn't suffer. Tell him someone was with him at the end, that he wasn't alone." "Were you there for the others, too? All the animals I've lost?" "Yes, and I will be there for all the ones to come. No creature dies alone, not truly. That is my purpose, my gift." And then it was gone, flowing out into the night like mist. Rachel sat with Buddy for a long time, her hand on his still warm fur. When she finally called his owner at 7 a.m. to break the news, she found the right words. "He went peacefully in the night. I was with him. He wasn't alone, and he didn't suffer. I promise you that." The owner cried, but thanked her, said it was a comfort, knowing he'd been at peace. Rachel never saw the shadow again, though sometimes when she had to euthanize a patient, she felt a presence in the room, a gentle, kind presence that helped ease the transition from life to whatever comes after. She learned to trust it, to understand that her job wasn't always to fight death, but sometimes to work alongside it, to make the passage as gentle as possible. Years later, Rachel found the appointment book from that night. She kept it, even though she'd moved to a different clinic. Now and then she'd open it and look at that entry. 3 a.m., special appointment, final passage. A reminder that in the medical field, whether for humans or animals, the greatest skill isn't always knowing when to fight. Sometimes it's knowing when to let go with grace.
4 stories, 4 encounters with the unexplainable, 4 night shifts that changed everything. The veterinary staff who work while we sleep see things that can't be explained by science or reason. They witness the thin places where our world touches something else, where the dead don't always rest, where mercy takes many forms, where some souls linger, waiting for closure. These are their stories. These are their truths.
Remember, the next time you leave your beloved pet at the vet overnight, know that the staff watching over them may be dealing with more than just medical emergencies. They may be guardians at the threshold between life and death, witnesses to mysteries we can barely comprehend. If these stories have chilled you, if they've made you look over your shoulder, then they've done their job. The truth is often more terrifying than fiction, and the darkness holds secrets we're not meant to understand. I'm Mr. Shadows, and these are the stories I bring you from the places where light fears to go. If you want more tales from the darkness, more true horror stories that will haunt your dreams, then subscribe to this channel. Follow Mr. Shadow's stories and join me as we explore the terrifying truths that hide in plain sight. Hit that notification bell because you never know when the next story will arrive. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Until then, keep your lights on, lock your doors, and remember, some things that happened in the dead of night were never meant to be seen. Sweet dreams.